Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Mark Chatterpall, and I'm the Executive Director of the New York City Food Policy Center. And I'd like to welcome you all to this event called Soil to Shelves, Detroit's Lessons on Getting Local Food Supply into Retail Models. And that is a very important element for us to discuss at this point in time, as New York City is embracing a new model that we believe is important to the space, but more importantly, it's a time for us to thoughtfully and carefully listen to other models from around the country that are actually working. So tonight builds on a series of working sessions with local regional farmers, micro producers, aggregators, supply chain stakeholders, and many small and BIPOC-led farmers. Our goal today is to really ask the question about affordable groceries and how do we make that practical. And the real challenge, more importantly, and we brought this up in a recent meeting, both Kian and myself, is how do we operationalize local procurement, the systems, standards, and infrastructure? And stores should support good jobs, fair prices, a resilient local food economy. But how do we operationalize that? And that is extremely important for us to discuss as well. Also, we need to also talk about how do we keep wealth in communities, advance economic and community justice. And the models that we are learning about today are great showcases of that practice in motion. And so tonight we are extremely fortunate to learn from leaders who have actually done this work and has done what I like to call grounded work, building on the literature from Walter Rodney. Our colleagues from Detroit have brought hard-won lessons from building a Black-led, community-owned grocery cooperative, and our New York panelists bring deep knowledge of our local landscape that we are trying to transform on a daily basis. I will say after our discussion, you can join the conversation directly through a live Q&A and small group breakouts, and your ideas will be folded, making pun intended here, into the Mayor's Office of Urban Agriculture's recommendations to the city. But let me go ahead and introduce our panelists. We have Malik, who is a board member, or I should say Baba Malik, who's a board member of Detroit's People's Food Co-op and a former executive director of Detroit's Black Community Food Sovereignty Network. We have Patrice, Deputy Director of Urban Agriculture for the City of Detroit. And we have Kiana, the Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of Urban Agriculture. And last but not least, we have Judy, a farmer and founder of Uptown and Boogie Health Project and Bronx Park East CSA. And so it's a pleasure to welcome you all. Folks, please put your emoji signs up and let's welcome our amazing panel. To break things down, I will tell you that we are going to be very strict on time management today. So we will be having a strict 45-minute round session, moderating some of the questions that have been shared with our panelists. And then from there, we're going to have a 10-minute Q&A that starts at around 10 minutes to 7. And from then onwards, we will break out into small groups. So thank you very much for this. Before I start, I would like to also just ask the panel on the screen right now, what is their current favorite meal that they are enjoying?
Mm.
So on my screen, I have Patrice first, then Malik, then Kiana, then Judy. Patrice?
Anything with arugula,
Great.
I am down for. So it can be pizza, it can be a salad with arugula base. I'm also a really big fan right now of kale salads, especially if the dressing is right. So I'm all about the kale and arugula greens right now. Thanks for asking.
Fantastic. That's amazing. Baba Malik?
Yes, I've been eating a lot of sugar snap peas the last few days. One of the things about gardening is when something comes to maturity, it all comes at the same time. And so I'm putting sugar snap peas in everything the last few days. So that's my favorite today. In a few days, I think garlic scapes are going to become my favorite.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, we're starting to get local strawberries at our farmers markets. So I'm super excited about that. I've been devouring them a little too much. And we just celebrated Puerto Rican Day Parade and
Yeah.
festival. So I've been a little heavy on the arroz con pollo and pastelón. I can't deny that. But I've been also finding some micro arugula, so that's been nice. But it's been heavy. It's been heavy on the rice and beans.
I think everyone stole my answer. We are very heavy on strawberries. I've been putting strawberries on everything. I'm so excited. The additional rain has helped strawberry harvest go a little longer. So that's been amazing. And now all the leafy greens are here. I'm just like salading it up, everything. So anything, last year there wasn't so many spinach. So now I'm seeing a lot more spinach. So I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm in my element right now.
Fantastic. I see in the chat here we have Michelle saying that she's enjoying arugula, strawberries, and a bunch of other things as well. So there is a lot of camaraderie in the room. And Haley is saying this conversation is making her hungry. So my apologies in advance. Perhaps I should move on. So I would like to start with perhaps a pertinent question that is primarily addressed to Patrice. Has there been interest in the local Detroit growers to scale local food production beyond their direct-to-consumer models such as CSAS and farmer markets? If so, what has the city done in policy or programming to prime local growers to scale into retail?
Yes, for sure. So yes, to answer your question right off, yes, there are farmers in the city that have saw what their capabilities are based off of some of the programs that we have going throughout the city. Before I joined the city of Detroit, in my role as the deputy director of urban ag, I was a food access manager at the historic Eastern Market, which is a public market here in the city of Detroit. And we were running a program called LFPA, which is Local Food Procurement program that came out of the Biden administration. And what that program did was allow for our urban growers to kind of dip their foot in scaling up their produce production models from just serving their local communities to potentially selling at a wholesale level. And so that's been very promising. That program is still going on. I think we're running close to the end of the funds that the LFPA program divvied up. But it really allowed us to see, I will say, about 12 or so farms in the city grow their productions from urban farming to production farming is what we would call it, so that they can sell to institutions like schools and the co-op, grocery stores, hospitals, of the like. So yes, we see a lot of that going on. We also had a grant program that we launched with the Eastern Market last year. Our office partnered with the Eastern Market Corporation, which is a nonprofit here locally. Um, and we administered about $240,000 in grants. And half of those grants, they were tiered grants. Half of the funds went towards helping farmers scale their production up again to meet the needs of governmental institutions, private institutions, and again retailers in the city like the food co-op.
Thank you. And I know I am jumping straight into it, but I feel for a conversation this important, it's very, very crucial that we get to some of the harder, more structurally rigid questions for us to work through as we are making our way through. So I want to pose a question to the entire group here. And it's a bit broad, but I'd love to incorporate everyone's perspectives on this. So the question is, can a for-profit model like a grocery store also be a lever for food sovereignty? And if so, how?
Maybe I'll jump in
Thank you.
and say that, yes, potentially it can be a lever if it's thoughtfully done. And if it's not thoughtfully done, it can actually work against food sovereignty. And
Mm.
so I know the major issue being addressed is affordability, which is a tricky issue within the food system. Um, and so I think the thing is, and while I think there's a lot of merit in having, public markets that are supported by the government, and we've seen other models throughout the country, throughout the world that have worked, I think there's a lot of potential in that. But we also have to be careful not to undermine local growers
Yeah.
by creating kind of artificially lower prices that diminish the sales of local growers. And then we also have to keep in mind that those public markets will be functioning within a larger ecosystem of other types of markets and ways of distributing food. And we, I think, ideally want to work in concert with those, not position those markets in a way that undermines those other aspects of the food system. And so I think it's that kind of networking, and perhaps this is one of our strengths in Detroit, is that networking of the various aspects together or melding together that helps us to move more towards food sovereignty as opposed to only addressing the question of affordability.
Thank you for that amazing point. Kiana, any thoughts?
Yes, I agree. I feel like for us, what we've been trying to explore here in the city with the Office of Urban Ag is before you can get to sovereignty, are we really addressing the elements of food justice? Are we really hearing and speaking to the growers in our state, in our region, and our hyper local growers? And are we identifying the values that they want to see? Are we also hearing from consumers on what they want? And oftentimes we hear time and time again, folks are looking for locally grown food. They want transparency and quality of their food. They want to know that their food is being grown well and it's good for the planet and not just for people. And they also want to feel like they're being a part of a larger system. And so for us, that really, sorry, and also cultural relevancy. We're in New York City, that can't get lost. And so when we think about what people are asking for and that question of affordability, like Baba Malik was saying, I think we need to really start to think about how to unpack that. And is it just looking as a way to say play the profit game? And then does local get undercut in that? Or could this actually be an opportunity on thinking about what are the policies at the city state level that we could be leveraging to support procurement, support infrastructure, support scale for these farmers, support value added products? And is that informing like future policy? And do we have plans in place that are encouraging folks to grow and to be able to scale? And I think once we can really work on that, it does start to get us to a point on trying to explore the food sovereignty piece. And I think New York has some opportunities on that. And I think for us too, it's thinking about the small business and not taking local, even volunteer driven farmers out of the economic activity or opportunity of what a retail store could bring. And so I think if we're thinking about the breadth of urban ag growers, from community gardeners and thinking about small businesses and the food businesses that want that, I think we can actually create that table to really push in a footprint for local and regional food. So I think it's possible, but we have to really be clear about the policies in place and the mission that we're trying to do and making sure that we're not compromising one in order to try to just get to an affordable food of
Right.
a corporate ag, but trying to find a way to get local in it as well.
Fantastic. Patrice, your thoughts on this?
Um, I want to hear from Judy too, but I was thinking, as Kayana and Baba Malik was talking, how do we do it? We have to be very methodical because local growers don't have the same landscape as our rural growers. Something that we've been looking closely at is the difference, right? So, some of the local growers, rural growers are subsidized in certain crops that they grow. We are not seeing that in our urban agricultural space. Our growers are not being subsidized for certain commodity crops or crops, cash crops that they grow. We do need to look at the price points and look at all of the things that were put into growing that produce as they bring it and take those things into consideration. And I think over time, we could see some type of subsidies go towards urban farming as well. But it has to be a political will there to actually create the subsidy, understand what that subsidy might help with as it looks to most of the time offset the cost of the produce that the consumer might have to pay at the end of the day. But we've been very methodical as it relates to that here in the city of Detroit. And one of the things that we did was we worked with a group of farmers when I was at the Eastern Market, and we looked closely at what went into making or creating or growing that particular item. But then we went further when the co-op opened, and this is, of course, our first year of the co-op, but we tried to work with the produce manager in the co-op, for example, to see how much of a carrot or carrots they source for the year. And the question is, how many carrots can you buy locally versus the carrots that you buy um, from a wholesaler or a distributor of sorts. Other ways that we've looked at this is how can those big conglomerate distributors loosen up the restrictions to allow for urban farmers to be vendors so that they can start to put their produce in with the bigger farmer produce so that that farmer can get a chance to sell their particular items in some of our co-ops across the United States or in particular regions or at Spartan Nash stores. In our case, in the Midwest here, Spartan Nash is a big conglomerate. How do we get our local farmers, once they scale up to a particular scale, into those spaces as well? And so we've been, again, very methodical. We haven't figured it all out yet. We're still trying to get there. There are hard things we have to talk about within farming. The farm workers that come on urban farmers, how does that look? How do we help get those farm workers paid? Because they go through the same thing. How do we get water to the farmers? In some cases in Detroit, some of our farmers are lacking the water resources that they need to scale those production farms up. And so those are some things of how we think about the how, if you will, of your question.
Thank you. And Judy?
I sit on the fence. So I'm a nonprofit and I have a farmers market, a farm stand, and a community supported agriculture program. And I run an ag business and ag tech for young adults to enter into the ag world. So I'm just trying to we just started our season, and we're seasonal from June to November. And, once November comes, it's like, where do everybody go? And of course, they go to the grocery stores. And the minute June comes, it's like a mad dash to the farmers market. It's just like, we missed you. Oh my God. And then they have relationships with their farmers. And that's a connection I still want. So, although, yes, I'm like, I understand we're seasonal, you got to go somewhere to eat. But I also want to bring in more of the small farmers into the city, have that relationship. I think there's a lot more forgiveness of pricing when you know the person you're talking to who grew it. Like, you see the husband, the wife, the baby, the dogs, and you just like they all come down in their, shag wagon, and it's like, oh, this is why it costs $4, like, to get down here. So I feel like there's a little bit of we get it, we understand you got here, and we want to support that. And the same with the farm stand. People come, have chats. We have cooking demos. So, although, yes, the for-profit model, but the one thing it's missing is that connectivity with people that people enjoy. And we have like kids programming at our farmers market. So they get to understand how to buy their own food and they get to talk to the farmer. They play with the farmer's kid. And like, and so but then I also sit in this weird wannabe retail because then I'm just thinking, how can I support the year-round farmers without me having to shiver and tumble outside in the streets? So I'm thinking, so I took like a program to understand like e-commerce. Everybody's going online, everyone's shopping online. What does that look like if we go online? During the off season to still keep that support with the farmer. Um, and what would that entail? Then you have your own added expenses. So it's like, so that's like I want to be for profit, but we want to still just hold on to the connection with farmers. And I sit as a new beginner farmer. The amount of paperwork I had to go into to make sure my food is safe. I'm like, oh, is anyone else going through this? Like, with the insurances and what does your soil testing look like and where are you getting your seeds? And I'm going the organic route. If God forbid I put something that has a coating and then all of a sudden, poof, all my work for the organic has disappeared. And then it's like, where do I get the water? I'm in a cooperative land with 6 other farmers. Now we got to share water. And I'm just like, I just keep struggling. So, and I didn't even get a seed in the ground yet. Like, and I'm hoping to this week. And then there's like the deer pressure. So now you're feeding the outdoor population, and then everyone's telling you to lose 30% of your food to the nature. And so it's like, and I have to explain that to now the customers coming to the market, like, oh, listen, let me tell you how it is to begin in 2026 farming. So, and then we're also seeing my last thing I want to say is that the generation passing of the farm is what I'm also worried about. So, yes, today farmers can put the food in there. What does their family legacy look like in continuing that food to go into that store? Which is why I started the ag business and technology portion, just like for the future generation. The paperwork for the USDA is getting thicker and thicker. So we're going to need those young minds to help go through that paperwork to keep the farming going. And so, although we're getting today's farmers food, it's a tomorrow is what I'm worried about of like, will that farm still be here, 5, 6 years from now? And will like that little girl that was at the farmer's market become the new farmer that will continue it going? And that's that generation that I'm kind of worried about with putting food into the stores. And then all of a sudden there's a halt because no one else can continue that. So that's my
Thank
rant.
you. No, that was not a rant. That was extremely concise, and you brought up many of the points that I was hoping to address, especially with the question about paperwork, and how is the city of Detroit navigating this? And perhaps I'd like to ask Patrice, perhaps just for some small insights into what processes are being done to kind of relieve small farmers from an extraordinarily heavy burden of doing all of this paperwork and working through all these certification processes.
Yeah, so some of the programs that's out there for farmers, not necessarily governmental ran programs, but we have DPSCD with the plants grant. So the DPSCD is supposed to, that's our school system They're supposed to buy food from the local farmer under the plants grants. That's a grant that's active right now for 3 years that we got from the USDA. And the paperwork part is supposed to waive the requirement for the farmer to be GAP certified or whatever the certification is they would normally make their vendors go through. That's been waived under the plants grant so that they can see what those barriers are of entry for farmers to get into the schools to start to sell their food. So this is a really good opportunity for DPSCD, for example, to see how many farmers they could get involved with, into the school system and see how long they can kind of build those relationships to serve schools with the food that they grow. And then another paperwork issue we have is permitting on farms. So very heavily paperwork heavy. We work with our building safety, environmental, and engineering department to help get our farms in the city permitted from the city's perspective. And what our office has done in the Office of Sustainability is to really build out a technical assistance role to help farmers through those particular challenges of the different paperwork or applications or permitting documents they might have to sort through and look through. We know farmers don't really have time for paperwork, but we sit with them to go through all of the different questions that they might be asked when they are applying for their permit or change of use permit for the city. And so we really sit with them to help them, and we build in office hours to do that. We might meet them at a public event that they might already be going to help them through those type of things in the city.
Thank you. I want to ask if anyone else on the panel wanted to contribute to that question.
Sure. I wanted to like compliment what Patrice was saying and touch on a little bit of some of the gems that Judy was dropping. But I what I'm hearing, and I think what's really important to amplify is it sounds like the city of Detroit really, they understand that there is a value to urban agriculture as a landscape, as an opportunity. And I'm sure no city is perfect, but I think what I'm hearing is that there have been grants and infrastructure and permitting that acknowledges a breadth of production. So there's folks that are doing it for, community respite and healing. There's also folks in support that are doing it for actual scaled production. And I think taking that opportunity of that plants grant to connect to schools, but also using the waiver gap is a really big deal. I know here in New York, the majority of our community gardeners are under jurisdictions of, license agreements that they're not allowed to sell. So they can earn a revenue, but all the money has to go back to the garden. So that can sometimes get in the way or impede scaling. And also just the opportunity for profit. Like you can't pay, say, a salary for that. We're thinking about ways to kind of explore revenue and streams into even grocery stores or scaling them up. But I think also what you said about GAP, good agriculture practices, oftentimes that is a requirement for food hubs or for farmers or food businesses going into food hubs or other infrastructure and retail. And the connection around schools, we've been working for the past 3 years on reimagining farm to school, where it gives us the opportunity to explore the connection of school institutions, so farm to school. And at what we've heard from our training program with small farm businesses is the barrier that gap can be. And we look around and we haven't been able to really find a consistent source of gap certification. I know, Judy, you and I have talked about GAP and group GAP and trying to find ways to offer that to community. But I think having the innovation and understanding of wanting to find connections to existing city procurement, understanding local food. And I'm sure, and tell me if I'm wrong, that that's not just regional food, but that's hyper local food being grown in the city of Detroit, getting into schools and in a scaled way. So not just harvest of the month and not just taste testing, but
Yes.
actual procurement. Am I on the right track?
Yes.
So
Yes.
having that opportunity to say, we understand this connection to procurement, we understand and value local supply, and learning on our side on what we can do, and also learning what you as a city, as a farmer can do and the city can do. And even if we waive it for a little bit, it still gives us an opportunity to learn how to refine that scale. I think is a great, it's a
Absolutely.
great door to not just scaling wholesale, scaling farm to institution, but it's a good prime for potential like retail. And I love, Judy, what you were saying about year round and maybe not wanting to be in the ground year round. But we do know that there's a lot of regional farmers that try to go year round. We know there's some urban growers that want to go year round. And what I hear oftentimes is the struggle around the infrastructure that is allowed in our city to scale that. So I know folks can see the picture, shout out to New Roots in the Bronx and hoop houses, but there's even struggles around greenhouses for some of our folks. But I think it's that will. Somebody said that political will, that need. And I think I'm hoping we're at the pivot point in New York City that when we're talking about stores, we're talking about value chains. And when we're talking about value chains, we're talking about values. And that has to include small farms, small businesses. And so I love that we are hearing from your office that intersection that you're offering in TA, the support. I wrote that down, like office hours to support with the paperwork. We've tried to do it in different ways, like through different training programs, like School Food Eats. Shout out to SJ if she's on. We, also have tried to work out on trying to figure out the paperwork burden and work with small business services to try to get folks an MWB certification, but the road is not done. And I think those critical point around what is the paperwork, how to minimize the burden of the paperwork, what is the TA, but the city offering that TA also means it's encouraging folks to think about growing beyond just their community, just for themselves in their community plot.
Absolutely. All of those things make sense. And I think, yes, I'm the one that said political will because it's very important that you have all of your other departments that will touch that kind of paperwork to be at the table with you. And we do have some of that, but it's not
Yeah.
perfect, and we're still working out some of the kinks of that.
No, it's great. Yeah,
Thank you.
in the city, it takes so many agencies and offices, and I'm sure we have different hierarchies, but I think your point is really valid on how y'all are like doing it. And it seems like that impact is being really shown. You have over 2,000 community gardens, so y'all doing something right.
Uh, they are. And that leads me to my next question that I wanted to do a quick lightning round for everyone to provide some insights. Since you have a successful model that is occurring, what are the main lessons from this work that you'd want a city like New York to hear about as it sets up these stores? So if there were like two main or three main things that you've seen from the success of your model that you would love to see New York adopt, what would those things be? And I'll start with Judy.
What we'll adopt is more of that community connection. Like, for example, there's some grocery stores that do then have grants to gardens. I would love to see that when the city does bring this, are they going to also have that store that's going to give a grant or some sort of funding support for those who are nearby, like the gardens nearby? We received a lot of grants that helped us get started through other grocery store, that provided some support. I would love to see that continue. Be more involved in the community, come table, come do like, support. Even if it's a gift card or something, it's just like be in the community. Just doesn't drop yourself and just be like, we're here, and then this, you go on to your business. So I think that's one that I feel works well for us. And also, what does it look like giving supplies too? Like, you know how expensive it is to get a bag? Like, like you'd be surprised. Like, I spend budget on just bags. Like, I would love some bags. So things and that nature, like supplies, is always helpful, and that kind of support and coming out when we have events. I think just don't show up and just drop yourself, but be part of the community. Yeah.
Thank you for those insights, Malik.
I want to start by quoting Amilcar Cabral, who said, "Tell no lies, claim no easy victories." And Mark, also thank you for starting us off by quoting Walter Rodney, somebody that we certainly need to be studying. And I'm saying that because you said, show us from your successful model. And I'll just say that we're still in the midst of it. I mean, it's successful in the fact that we have established farms and a food co-op, and these things are operating. We're not at the break-even point, though. So, we're not out of the woods. So I don't want to paint some overblown picture of our success. But we are certainly learning lessons, and some of the lessons that I would suggest that we've learned that perhaps folks in New York could learn would be deep community engagement. A movement is only as strong as the community of people that supports it. And people have to have a value proposition, as Kiana said, that's beyond just affordability, beyond just their individual ability to save money. There has to be something larger that benefits the community. And so that means that we have to be engaged with the community. We have to be embedded in the community. And we've seen more and more in recent months that even after we open, we have to continue this intense political education, particularly in the co-op space, because co-ops are such a different kind of formation that
Yeah.
people aren't really familiar with them, and we haven't been trained how to even approach working together in a cooperative fashion. So that early and continuous community engagement and political education, and then also, I would say engage with local producers very early on, because there's a lot of kinks to work out. It sounds good that we're going to get local produce in a local store, but all those operational things that have been discussed tonight have to be worked through. All the details, forms, paperwork, procedures, delivery dates, all those things need to be worked out in advance, so that when the store opens, you're not struggling trying to figure that out. And we're still, frankly, figuring a lot of that out at Detroit People's Food Co-op. And then to make it even more complicated, in the midst of trying to figure out those relationships, the food co-op is not a static thing, right? We're now on our second general manager. We have a board of directors that intentionally turns over a period of time, and we're on our second produce manager. So it's not like there's a thing that's a static thing and we establish it and then we can go from there. That the store is evolving at the same time, and the same thing with the farms and the other folks that we interact with. So just being aware that it's a continuous and dynamic process.
Thank you. Patrice?
How do you come behind all of those great comments? One thing that keeps coming to my mind, if you're gonna ask farmers to support these grocery stores, if you will, you have to figure out how to get them ready for that. So, like Baba said, it's not static. It's cold storage vans, wash and pack stations on farms so that they can have the vegetables bundled the way that you want to receive them on the dock. These things are not everyday urban farmer level things that they think about. And the city will ask the farmer to show up because they think, oh, they got this locally grown good food, nutrient dense. And then when they bring all of their collard greens in a plastic garbage black bag to the dock, they like, what's this? This is not food safe. It's not what we thought y'all would do. So be very precise on how you want to receive things, and then help them help you do that. successfully. And one of the biggest things is like I said, those wash and pack stations on farms where y'all can put those where farmers can share those resources. Cold storage, refrigeration on farms is a thing because when urban farmers harvest things, they need to store them properly in at temperatures that are safe, to make sure that the food is of food safe levels. So you have to meet them where they are. Also, getting them trained on food safety, serve safe certifications could help them do the basic things that y'all may ask them to do on the farms. And infrastructure on farms are very important. But also the soil, you have to have good soil to start with. What we are seeing in the city of Detroit, we're selling our lots a lot of times as is. The farmer has to work. I'm gonna be transparent. I'm a farmer in the city that bought as is purchased land from our land bank. It's not easy to cultivate that land. It takes a lot of years to cultivate the land, to get it ready to produce the food at the level that we need it to be produced at, so that we can serve our community the way we think we want to serve it. Thinking a certain way about a thing is just that. It's a thought. You have to get into community to know what their needs are, so that they can again meet you where you want to be, to help our overall community be served, and us to be food sovereign and nutrient densely fed, and all of the things that we look to do with our food, urban ag and food system work.
Thank you. Kiana, I know I'm putting you a bit under the hot seat here, but I'd love to hear some of your general thoughts on this issue as well.
I mean, well, if it's not hard to follow Malik, imagine trying to follow Malik and Patrice and Judy, but I'll do my best. I mean, I definitely echo everything that they have already mentioned. So what also comes up for me that I think needs to be part of the conversation is let's start with the soil. I think when we are supporting or saying we want to support regional and local supply, we have to be realistic about the underutilized land, the current land that we're supporting, and giving folks a chance, even if it's new agreements, on how to scale that. You can't expect folks to grow food if they're struggling to get the resources to keep their soil healthy and clean. One of the things that the offices of Urban Ag has been trying to explore is urban conservation. So not just looking at food production and just asking people to just produce, but are we actually providing resources, identifying resources that the city and state could be paying for to really remediate our soil on a consistent basis? Are we exploring land for growing? Are we creating new agreements for land stewardship? But to your point, Patrice, where's the infrastructure in order to support? We can't just say grow in a vacuum. We really need to think about the infrastructure that it takes. And I think until we really value that for our scale of hyperlocal growers, our small growers, and not just big hubs, we're going to always miss the needle on trying to connect a narrative or a narrative to making it a true value. And I think what we've been trying to push in the city and will continue to amplify thanks to community gardeners on the call and other folks that aren't able to be here is to support local supply means that you're putting resources behind that value and that commitment. And the commitment starts from the soil. I think the other thing that came up for me, and I think about potential of grocery stores, I think y'all touched on it too, is it can't just drop into a community just because we think we're addressing needs. We need to really hear from the ground up what they want and if that model is adaptive to what they need. So if it's going to be a source or a connection of food, that is great. But what I saw when I walked through Detroit Food Co-op and what I see in other spaces is the opportunity for our grocery stores to be third spaces. And the only way we're going to truly identify what a community wants, not just relevancy in crops, is what they need in that community, what's already there. So we're not in competition with partners, but how can this be an amplification of a third space while people are growing? So Judy, when you say like all the things you're offering at the farmers market, there can be a way to adapt a store, a space for that. And Patrice, when you say the infrastructure, especially since so much of this is new infrastructure, we should be really pushing ourselves. Well, yeah, you put me out there, so I'm gonna be out there. We're after 6, but I think we really need to explore the infrastructure of grocery stores as not just a space. If we're going to make things affordable, make it affordable to the holistic part of somebody's life. And I think we can do that for people and we can do that for businesses. If these are stores, especially the ones that are going to have to be built, where is the dry and cold storage? Is that a critical point for the hyperlocal growers? Is that even a better access point for the regional growers? This is just how we can make that more realistic, is looking at the stores as not just retail. Is it really third space? Is it also functional space? And then the last thing, this came up in a local session that Brenda in Brownsville hosted, was when you have a store or potentially a public grocery store. And again, I felt this when I went to the Detroit Food Co-op, is you're in that retail space, and yes, you can do a lot with what you're trying to do for that day, but it should also feel like it's a reinvestment in the community because people needed it. But in addition, it should also be a hallmark to what's already in the community. So it should feel like a mark to encourage folks to learn more about, the hard skills, certifications and stuff for businesses. But for the people who are just trying to figure out how I feed my family, it should be a hallmark for the community gardens and farms that are nearby and are supporting them. And I think that then becomes a true ecosystem, or it could start being an ecosystem where it's not just thinking about how do we drop in new infrastructure, but it can really be about how does this support the community that, and I do think the administration wants to do that. I think there is a desire to connect to cultural relevancy, to connect to economic justice. And, fortunately, there's an Office of Urban Ag to kind of help inform that. But I think we have really strong advocates and community gardeners that can inform that too. But I think we should look at the gardens as well, the CSAs, the farmers markets, the temporary as well as the brick and mortar spaces in our community, green and growing spaces, as is this store going to be a hallmark to bring us back? And do people know that they can touch land in different places and also get food in different places?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think one of the main thematics that is coming out of this conversation is the importance of using Rodney's language of grounding with the people and really getting a deeper, closer, dare I say, qualitative sense of what is happening in the communities, and then build a network from the ground up using that kind of listening practice. And I think that's incredibly important. So thank you all for talking about that. Speaking of which, I think we only have time for perhaps one final question that I'd like to do a lightning round on, and I'd like to start with Judy and then move down. So one of the concerns that came up recently, and even some of the information that Hunter College at the Food Policy Center had provided to Business Insider, actually made its way into a major piece that they showcased, which focused on competition. One concern that has come up is the competition among small food businesses like bodegas, but also, the clash between that and local suppliers. And I would like to know, it's a bit of a forecasting, but I'd like to learn about some of the strategies that folks in Detroit have learned or done to mitigate these kind of contestations. And Judy, since I asked you to respond first, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the issue and what would be some possible solutions to the problem.
For competition wise, I think most of what's happening is the price of the space. Some grocery stores can, yes, drop 20,000. So now you're finding developers are looking for the larger entities than delis. Before, you used to have a lot more retail space, box size spaces for delis to go into, and now they just can't afford. So they're leaving the area. We see a lot of the delis closing, and it's mainly because of rent, versus competition. Then you have other grocery stores. I feel like with Washington Heights, it's very much like a, everybody speaks the, you go in there, you're speaking Spanish, everyone's culturally relevant, it's there. But they started adding bottling service. And so canners are coming in the area and then having that connection too. So now I'm like, oh, I'll get my 5 cents back, which is something a lot of other grocery stores didn't have. And I love that all of them are starting to pop up in Washington Heights, having the recycling features. So I find that at least in the spaces, they're finding other ways to get people in, even as just canning and being able to recycle your can. You're starting to see that being added into like the sea towns and the smaller neighborhoods. Also, what we're noticing is that when we see groceries, like the recent like panic, everyone just beeline to Trader Joe's and showed, oh my God, the lines and the shelves are empty. And I'm going to my key food and I'm like, those shelves are fine. Like, I was okay. And so we need to stop imagining like grocery store as the sea town and everybody goes running and say, look at their shelves are empty. And I'm like, the neighborhood grocery store is a full and has all of the international ingredients that I need to make my meal. So I'm okay. So that's another thing that I'm also seeing too, when it comes to like what we call groceries. Like if we're saying Trader Joe's is a grocery, there's others, and they have that piece in the culture where you can get your avocados and your plantains and so I don't know. I would say that is we're just seeing people just being more innovative than competition. Like everyone, my farmers market is fine. No grocery store is trying to take my farmers market down. I'm not having to get an impact that way. But I do see that being more of just people just shifting themselves in retail spaces, catering to more larger sizes to bring in more chains and so into the area. So
Thank
I
you.
don't know if that answers the question.
It does provide some really good insight, and I appreciate that. Malik, any thoughts on the question?
Yeah, I do have a few thoughts on the question of competition. It's very difficult for a small store, and I'm speaking on the scale of store the Detroit People's Food Co-op is, about 10,000 square feet of retail space, to compete on price point with multinational corporations. And as I've heard Kiana say several times, there has to be some other value proposition besides just price point. That's important. Consumers are concerned about price point. We have to address that, but there has to be some larger value proposition. And that larger proposition, I think, involves how the workers in the store are treated, how they're paid, trying to pay them a fair, livable wage, um, making sure that the growers that we're buying from are being paid fairly for their produce, the fact that we're circulating wealth within the community and hiring people from within the community, and people see that. And then, as Kiana also mentioned, it's a third space. It's a space that was intentionally designed to have all kinds of discussions about food sovereignty and social justice, and how we create a more sane society. Additionally, for those who might not have visited Detroit People's Food Co-op, it's actually part of a larger project. The building itself is called the Detroit Food Commons. And so the first floor is the grocery store, the Detroit People's Food Co-op, but we have 4 commercial kitchens on the second floor. And so, again, we're thinking about how we create a microcosmic closed loop system where we have a network of growers, we have kitchens where they can, on at least on a small scale, produce value added products, and we have a retail space where those can be sold. We want all of those to be connected, again, to create in a microcosmic way a model of what a closed loop self-determining food economy might look like.
Yeah.
Thank you. Patrice, any thoughts?
And it doesn't specifically get to the retailer or the grocery store model per se. However, during the pandemic, there was this panic, right? Oh my God, schools closed down, wholesalers didn't know where to take their stuff, stores were kind of semi closed and open because they didn't know what the pandemic really was about, if people were going to be sick. They didn't know how to do the distance at that time. We really weren't really understanding all of the dynamics. One thing that I noticed during the pandemic, being in the food system work that we're in, even with all of the farmers producing enough food in the rural areas, or what they might say was enough, wasn't really enough. um because of the panic shopping, like Judy said.
Right.
People went in there, they panicked, they bought all of the things off the shelf, not knowing like where they were going to get their next bunch of greens from, but not really understanding that there is that farmer right down the street that was growing the greens that they needed all of the time. I think panic takes us as a public to a space, even competition, from other retailers. Like there is a store, a couple of stores that's very close to the co-op. And two of the stores reached out to me asking, how this was going to impact their business models as they saw this co-op opening. A lot of them were really concerned about the co-op being able to use double up programs like double up food bucks and things of that nature. And they hadn't even got double up food bucks. But I think, my to the point of the question, we shouldn't be concerned about the competition if we have not resolved food insecurity. Health issues in our community are still very prevalent. So competition, yes, we don't want to compete with each other where we're putting each other out of business. I get that, but let's be honest, we still have a lot of work to do in our neighborhoods and with our residents to solve these food insecurity issues, and making sure that our health outcomes are better in our urban spaces as it relates to food related diseases like diabetes, hypertension, and obesity. So when you see a new grocery store pop up or a farmer's market come into your community, don't be threatened by it. Support it in some way. Value added products are a beautiful thing. And the jam that you might sell at your store is not the same jam that the co-op is selling at their store, at our store. Because it's different, and I think people are more willing again to, like Baba Malik said, invest in it when it's something bigger than just a financial benefit involved, when it's about their mental health or their physical health or the health of their communities. I don't think competition really matters, and all of that scare stuff can get thrown out if we just decide to work together in tandem with one another. And maybe it's a really good idea for retailers in these communities that might feel like a competition is coming to meet with each other, actually come and be involved to see exactly what's happening so that they can understand it better and not feel like it's going to box them out in some way, shape, or form financially.
Thank you. And I am going to say that we're already out of time, even though that we are just warming up the conversation, I would like to say. But I would like to give the final word to Kiana to round out this portion of our discussion. And then we are going to jump straight into our Q&A. So for those of you who are on the call who would like to pose questions directly to the panel, please feel free to put it in the chat, and Jennifer will share those with me to share with the panel. So Kiana, your thoughts on the question, and then we're going to shift into Q&A.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I think this is what's so valuable about a chat like this. It's so good to get different perspectives on what this competition question has been, because it's been a hot question here in the city. So getting that perspective and hearing from other folks is really important. I will say I've heard with my city hat on and off, direct and consumer models that exist like farmers markets, CSAs, in neighborhoods have wondered if the new grocery stores will make competition, or would it be supportive or not. Yeah, small businesses, small food businesses like bodegas, delis have also expressed some concerns about competition. And I think one of the things we could also explore, I think some of the examples y'all lifted is really important about not actually changing the paradigm around what competition looks like or can be. And I think another thing we could add to that is just kind of reiterating how local and regional food and a product diversity, a value proposition could actually maybe address that in ways that have multiple benefits. So if there's a concern about a store carrying certain products because it's similar to others or certain price points, again, this is where it can be creative to ensure that there's local supply, fresh products, as well as value added products. I think you mentioned redemption, I think, Patrice, and that was another point I wanted to bring up too, is this can also be an opportunity to and I think Judy, you said too, there's different ways to add other benefits into these stores to help address competition. And again, I think if we're really trying to support local and regional food, that is its unique value proposition in so many different ways. I think having redemption and ensuring that's there in these stores will also bring that, where you can use your SNAP or your WIC or your double up, or even exploring how we could expand that. It actually might, again, create more opportunities for folks. So I can be a farmer and come down and drop off at my CSA, but it might also be valuable to me to diversify my portfolio and see if I could be a partner with an operator and also be in the store, knowing like there might be some additional redemptions that will support my supply and my work. And I think, like you said, I think leveraging pricing could also be a way to minimize competition. I know there's, some volatility around pricing. What's pricing for conventional products is different than local products, but we also have models that we can learn from, revolving loan funds. Many CSAs have advanced pricing. So they've already have built in predictable pricing to a certain extent around vegetables or at least produce. So I think these are other ways that we can really be innovative. And we know New York City loves being innovative around, how to mitigate competition for small businesses as well as larger operators.
Thank you, Kiana. And I do want to shift very quickly into our Q&A because I do believe it's one thing for the four of us to have a the five of us, sorry, to have a conversation with each other. But we do have a room full of folks who do have some really good questions that they're posing. So the first one I'd like to ask is from Cassandra, who said, "I'm a board member of on a food co-op in Connecticut. How can the co-ops support community, amplify a third space for the community, functional space, infrastructure, any grants to do that, and how can I find out?" So Judy already sent a link to NYU's resources there, but I do like the first part of the question, which is how can the co-op support community and amplify the third space for the community? So I'll start with Malik and then Patrice and then Judy and then Kiana.
Yeah, I was contemplating the question because I just don't have enough context for the co-op in Connecticut, either the community or the physical layout of the building that they have. But I would say it's important to have the intent to have the community, have the co-op embedded in the community so that people in that community see it as theirs, and to provide some kind of physical space where discussion and meetings can take place. I didn't mention earlier when I was talking about the larger building that the co-op exists within, that we also have a banquet hall on the second floor, a hall that can hold 250 people at tables and about 400 at auditorium style. So that was created intentionally to have a space where community members could come together and discuss, exchange knowledge, and conspire on how to get free. And so, to the extent that you're able to provide that kind of space within the co-op and make it available to community members, it's a value add to the community. And if you want to email me, I'll put my information in the chat. And if you want to give me more information about the specifics in Connecticut, I might be able to give a more meaningful answer.
Thank you, Malik. So, Cassandra, you already have your homework there, so please enter your email address and Malik will contact you directly. But Patrice, over to you.
I was gonna say we use the co-op too, as the Office of Sustainability for our community compost drop-off program. And that's been very helpful, I think, for both the residents of the city who are participants in our composting program. They get to go to the co-op to drop off their food scraps. They get educated on how to collect their food scraps clean. And then they might want to drop off their food scraps and then go into the grocery store and buy something. Our food scraps then are digested in a digester and taken to B-Town Farms where they get to use those food scraps back into their farming operation. And so the co-op is really a grounding for a lot of things we want to do in community and we are doing in the community. Another thing that we could offer, that we do offer in the co-op in some way, shape, or form, but I've been thinking a little bit more nuance about this, is like we offer a space at the co-op in the city for farmers to come and sell their produce. In case they can't get their produce into the store, they can participate in a farmers market that happens, I think, once a month during the summer seasons. And that's been a really good, I think, thing for farmers to kind of get their minds around, because some of the entry points to get their food into the co-op is a little bit difficult. But the farmers market in the parking lot of the co-op kind of helps them still display what they have on hand and what's locally grown and get people shopping and supporting them directly is always a thing. And I think we can go a little bit further with that by offering a wholesale type of sale of our products in the co-op at some point. There are some grocery stores in the city of Detroit, especially in our southwest part of the city, that some of their grocery stores sell wholesale in the back dock area of their grocery store. That could be a potential third way or third use of the co-op, if you will, is to sell wholesale and do it purposefully and sell it out of the dock to people who might want to buy wholesale products.
Wow.
Thank you for that. And I'm very grateful to say we have some brilliant interns, two from Vassar College, one from Yale, that are making notes from this conversation. So I'm going to ask our interns to please make a really good note of that for our post discussion. But Judy, do you have any thoughts on this question, as well as Kiana?
Do you want to go, Judy?
Go ahead.
Okay. So in terms of Connecticut, it's been a while since I have done some work, but I do feel like in Connecticut and with farmers, but I am curious to check in with the Ag Commissioner Halbert and see if there are existing grants that are relevant to Connecticut that could be supportive. I know he's been a great champion of, small farmers and Hurlburt, sorry, Brian. And there might be some specific Connecticut things. I think for New York, since it's an evolving topic, I think some of what is coming up is really, helpful. And I think it's also thinking about some of the infrastructure grants that do come up, healthy food financing at the federal level. I think this is also a potential advocacy point to bring up, not just at the city level, but also at the state in our state ag and markets office. And thinking about now that these are spaces and people kind of calling in this, how are there existing grants? I know our ag and markets, the assistant commissioner Damali Winter offers a newsletter, so there might be grants that we're just not thinking of offhand that could be relevant because it might speak to infrastructure, not necessarily just food production. But I think in terms of now and just amplifying the third space, I think Patrice's idea of using it in different ways. I know some folks have even said for us, are there different ways the space of this retail grocery store can, like you said, have other non-retail components? Could it potentially, have kitchen space where that could be meal prep for seniors or for elders or for other, meal products, mutual aid? So I think again, not to speak, we would need more details to speak to Connecticut. I'd love to check in with some of our ag partners and farmers out there in Connecticut, but I would say these are some of the good ideas that folks should consider around your advocacy points, whether it's at the city level, state level, and the work around federal level.
Thank you. And
There, there's
I,
still
I,
money there too. Let's be, it's the feds, it can be a challenging space, but there are still representatives in your districts that have earmark funding and other funds. And even with the challenges that we might have in our federal administration and changes at USDA, I would never tell people not to speak to their congressional representatives and how they can support work, especially infrastructure. Capital earmarks can go a long way.
I think for me, we don't have co-op spaces in Harlem, but what I have been shifting is workforce development. So young students need, that development, that skills. And so we are trying to like find ways that we turn into this ag business. Like how do they know how to prepare food and then provide it for a community member? Because we get a lot of questions about what do I do with okra? What do I do with, celery or, and then so we have like cooking demos that teach them. But this year we're piloting a program where we're going to work with like churches that have commercial kitchens and utilizing that space for the students to then take the food that's coming from the pantry, prepare it, and then put it as a meal of like, this is what it looks like at the end you can do with that meal. And then as me, I have a food handler's license. I want to see a lot more people have food handler's license. So we're going to give those students that opportunity to have a food handlers. And in New York, it's good for New York City is good for 10 years. So we're talking about a person who's in their 20s. They have 10 years to, see what they want to do with food and how to prepare food. And what food should look like when it comes to them. Like, like, was this temperature good? So we could eliminate the food poisoning that I'm seeing a lot that's happening lately. With a lot more people going out. But I would say looking at workforce development, a lot of that money has kind of, I wouldn't say gone, finished spending, but there's still some there. And if you can utilize that space to show a young adult, an adult, on how to shift careers, maybe they might want to go into food or they may want to go into accounting and giving them that skill that they can take off to their career or new career.
Thank you. The questions are coming in, so I'm going to have to move through them very quickly. But I'm going to ask everyone to provide a lightning round answer, which is never a good thing or an easy thing to do. And in most times, whenever I'm facilitating these types of conversations, I tend to have a big pot of cook-up rice boiling in the corner so that we can sit and reason and then give us the opportunity to actually flesh out these answers in more detail. But unfortunately, since we're on Zoom, I have to be a bit more
Are
concise.
you from GT by any chance?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Uh,
I'm
moving
picking up
on,
some
though.
signs of that.
Yes, if the signs weren't clear, they're quite prominent at this point in time. Ray has a very good question here that says, glad to hear there's consensus that community centering and engagement is key to the sustainability of any food access related projects. Those efforts start from the community. What can government agencies and non-community entities do to start addressing food access, knowing that they can't be the ones to lead community-based advocacy? So Malik,
So
any
yeah,
thoughts?
so first, speaking of GT, Ray is also from partially, I think, from Guyana. But anyway, very good question, very important question. Um, And I don't work on the government side of things, so I'm not going to try to say what the government should do, but I'll just give a few thoughts on things. I'm more on the community side, pushing the government to do things. I think what's important is for government to realize that the initiative has to come from the people, and that what the government should do is facilitate the desires, the will of the people to help provide the resources and the wherewithal for them to accomplish their vision. And the same with funders. Sometimes we see funders, in my opinion, they get things a little twisted and think not that they shouldn't be the ones resourcing the community doing the work, but they should be deciding what the work is that should be done. And so I think we have to make sure that we're centering the people, their own articulated needs, and that we're supporting that as opposed to trying to superimpose something on communities that they may or may not really see as being in their best interest. But beyond that, the people who work in government will have to figure out what that looks like and how you make that a reality.
Thank you very much. Judy, any thoughts?
Uh, Pay people. Pay people. I'm like with the being a nonprofit and looking at a lot of the government grants and then not seeing a line item for salary or the support for consultants or services or tech needs. I think that could be one line item that could be added, like especially technical assistance support. So as we navigate the retail and the onlines and having that support. I think on my end, writing these grants, I think that's what they could do. Pay people.
Great point, and there's no denying it. Now, I want to ask Patrice if you have any thoughts about the question, and then finally, but not the least, Kiana.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say what everybody else said. The government has to put their money where their mouth is. They gotta support it. And then they gotta know again, like Baba Malik was saying, like what the need is and what the community is asking for in order to do put the money in the right place. But yes, I think the government is going to have to give the money to help with to jolt the whole production, scaling, and all of those things. And even the food workers. So put the money where their mouth is.
Thank you, Kiana.
Just talking to myself here. Yeah, yes, totally agree with what has been said. I think for us being a small office, some of the challenges that we've seen too, right, is where the money is going. So one of the things we've tried to do is create opportunities to demonstrate the proof of concept of where the money can go. So our work with purchasing with purpose and micro sourcing, we can't advocate. So one of the things that we did is create projects that demonstrate the proof of concept. We want culturally relevant food. We want to support small and BIPOC farmers. We, did public-private fundraising to create initiatives that create contracts for partners like that and help match folks. Sometimes it's just been the conversation and relationship building where we've helped, like shout out to Sean and Jenny and Gabby at BQE and, creating just just helping them connect and building a new CSA in the community. So again, being a government entity, we can't advocate, but I hope garden side chats like this, some of the resources that we provided, the articles we've been working with in collaboration with Hunter Food Policy Center, gives folks that content and people feel clearer about maybe some of the things that feel a little more esoteric, like bills and policy or how to advocate. Y'all have the solutions, y'all don't have the resources. And so I'm hoping the resources we're providing is a tool for your advocacy. So you're able to speak and feel strong about what you're advocating for and electeds. And then you could also come back to us as an office and say, that's what we're looking for. That's what we want to continue to see supported. So I hope that that's something that we're able to, what people feel like that's what we've been trying to do with our initiatives and programming. And again, thanks to partners like Patrice and Malik, Judy, and Mark for showing up. to just, share that knowledge. But at the same time, the push, I have to turn it around when it comes to advocacy to non-government entities as well as folks, is you have to also be your own advocates. And I hope what we're sharing feels supportive for you to be those advocates. The electeds are listening to you. The grants, they're being informed by you. We're just here to, make it happen in the city or implement.
Thank you. I will say that unfortunately we're almost out of time, so we have time for one more question and one more quick lightning round before we have to wrap things up. So Dakota wrote in the comments here that they love the wholesale idea. How can small scale food makers be connected to small scale farmers in a way that maximizes farm income and makes local ingredients accessible to entrepreneurs? So it's a really good question, but I think we have enough time to go through it and at least flesh out some preliminary ideas on this issue because it is quite pertinent to the topic at hand. So trying to mix things up in the final round, I'm going to ask Judy to go first, followed by Patrice, then Kiana, and then last but not least, Malik. And one of my staffers is messaging me and saying, "You're sounding like a professor, so you need to calm down on the classroom ethics." But I'm sorry if it's a reflex. So, Judy, over to you.
I was trying to reread the question. So what was the idea? It was to buy wholesale? Like, is that?
So the question is, the
Yeah.
person loves the wholesale idea. This is in relation to small farmers selling to wholesalers. How can small scale food makers be connected to small scale farmers in a way that maximizes farm income and makes local ingredients accessible to entrepreneurs?
Oh, as a small farmer, you have to, um, we're busy. You're not gonna find us. You have to come to us. I'm like, I don't even know how you can find us. I'm in the field. Let me tell you, I'm making a mad dash out of this computer. Like, and I'm gonna go into like a zone with no signal, and you will not find me. So it's either you come to we like a gathering. So if you happen to see a gathering happen and it says that it's gonna have local farmers, I suggest to show up. That's how you're gonna find us with like food in the hand and laughter and having fun. We're not gonna be on the internet. We're not answering the phone. We're not answering emails. You gotta come, drive in the car, get your Google Maps, start putting pins and find me. And literally, like in Harlem, if we don't see you, we don't know you, you never existed. Like, so you can email me till you're blue in the face, you'll never get anything. And that's what I realized with a lot of the spaces. You just have to just show up and then say, because sometimes the farmer doesn't even think that wholesale is even an option until you approach them and you say, I can buy this wholesale. A lot of farmers don't know that with pantries that they could get tax credit. So maybe a pantry can say, here, provide this, and I can talk to you about the tax credit you can receive because I'm a certified pantry. Like sometimes it's just just being in that space and then addressing it. Maybe the person doesn't even think that's an option. So I don't know if that helped, but
I mean, do you mind if I cut the flow just a little bit?
Go ahead,
I
Kiana.
mean, only because Judy, I think it's a good segue on, you're totally right. So many of our well-meaning and really hardworking farmers, you already heard Cheryl left the chat already, like we know that y'all busy and we know that y'all are doing good work and also are really unheralded. So the Office of Urban Ag understands that. And one of the things that we've been trying to do is build those micro sourcing relationships. Because I think it's very harder for multiple people to try to reach you. But I think as an office, it's something we can offer with our purchasing with purpose to say, hey, we know aggregators, we know farm collectives, and we've been doing that. And that's a way that I think we can make it one streamlined call to help make those connections and also be a space for awareness so people learn more about not just the food, but what it takes And I think being an office in the city, I would rather my capacity and a lot of times to be helping break that down for folks. If you need to know wholesale, you're trying to learn, where it come from. I would rather y'all stay where y'all want to be, if that's, growing, to then be able to have that conversation with folks, because we can share that information. But when it comes to the business part, we can also be supportive. And that's something the office has been looking with our values aligned infrastructure, is how can we scale micro sourcing? Are we creating opportunities with direct to schools? And that might be a small, micro contract and be relevant to farmers like you, Judy. Or is it scaling, like you said, wholesale opportunities, and then knowing where we're hearing from folks who are interested, but we also know the farmers, and making that match like we did at the 6th Street Center CSA. We're able to help build a student CSA in that relationship, plus a community CSA. So y'all are busy. We know y'all are busy. And at the same time, I hope we're continuing to get support of our own to help resource and scale up making those matches and being that proof of concept. We don't have to wait for retail to help make these connections to community. We could be doing it right now with each other. And I hope folks see that that's what we're trying to do here.
Thank
We
you.
want you to grow.
Absolutely. Patrice, any thoughts? And then Malik, I'll have you wrap things up.
Well, I think I answered it a little bit in the chat, but I love Kiana's answer. Aggregating the smaller producers need to kind of, if they can, aggregate together. I've seen a lot of power in farmers coming together. We have a lot of different co-op models in the city of Detroit, with farmers coming together, bringing food together, selling it in CSA models to restaurants, stores across the city together. They got to do that. Someone in the mix of all of the small growers needs to be the aggregator, contact, and then they get to use an app or some sort to get the message out that the growers have the food that they're looking for, possibly. But it's this give and take with either the restaurant partners or the local entrepreneur that needs that box of squash, for example, and it's this disconnect. So I would love to pick your brain, Kiana, about how y'all's aggregation or
Sure.
produce uh, model works, because I want to do some of that too. The city has to source
Yeah.
food for our senior food program. I'm out there talking to farmers, going to visit the farms to see what they got. When are y'all gonna have it? Because I want to buy some of it. Those are the conversations that I have. Is a one-on-one a lot of times, or if I can catch them where they are with me a lot of times. But you have to go and meet the farmer basically and make those connections and make them easier by putting systems in place to make it easier for people to communicate back and forth to one with one another.
Thank you
That's
very
right.
much. Malik?
Yeah, I'd like to offer kind of a variation of an idea that we used at Detroit People's Food Co-op prior to opening, and that is that we had a vendors fair where we invited the producers of local items to come to a fair to
Yes.
fill out a questionnaire, to have a one-on-one interview. And Patrice participated in that, I think helped coordinate it actually, um, where we were able to see what the kind of length and breadth of the local production was, and then to get as many of those products in the store as possible. So perhaps something could be done like that, some kind of fair that links growers with value added producers. But I would add, as has been acknowledged, farmers are extremely busy. And I'm a grower. I'm not a farmer now. I'm a small grower, but I used to be a farmer. And so I feel the pain. It's hard to pull away from that to come to meetings. So it needs to happen in the off season, like maybe January or February, but that's something that perhaps government could do to bring together not only to bring together farmers not only with value added producers, but also with retailers who might be interested in buying things from those local farmers.
Thank you for those insights. And I will say thank you all for your amazing contributions and for all of our participants who provided excellent feedback in our chat and also on screen. I will say also, we will be sending you a survey to please fill it out for us so we can get some really good feedback on how to tweak some of our topics and also what modalities work for everyone who's spread across the country. Also, I'll ask you all, as a shameless plug, to please subscribe to our newsletter at Hunter College Food Policy and also to look at the Mayor's Office of Urban Agriculture and their website and the pieces that they're putting out. And feel free to also check out their Instagram as well as ours. Kiana has also mentioned in the chat that if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to her or to Evan. So I think there's some really good connections to be made there. The final thing I will say is that one of the things that has really impressed me recently was the move by small countries to really adopt food sovereignty as a framework. And on that note, I have taken it upon myself to facilitate those type of forums and to build them out. So in December, I'd like to announce that we will be holding a Black Food Policy Summit that will be happening. I think for now, tentatively, the dates will be either the second week of December, and we will provide a call for proposals at that time. And the summit will focus exclusively on Black voices and on food policies and on those intersections, however broad or however you want to frame them. And in my role as executive director, I feel it's important for us to start facilitating these kind of discussions at the Food Policy Center from the voices of those who have been marginalized. And so recently we had many of are saying New York City's first Indigenous Food Policy Summit, where we had Indigenous peoples from not only the US, or from Turtle Island, from many other parts of the world come together and talk about food policy, because these topics and these things that we're learning transition across borders very easily. So in December, we will be focusing and building towards that. And so please keep an eye out for the call for proposals. And I would encourage everyone here on the panel and also for those who are listening to me on the Zoom call to please consider attending or providing a proposal. And on that note, I'd like to thank you all for your time. And I'm looking forward to meeting you all in person at some time sooner than later. And thank you all. Take care, everyone. See you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.